Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Daniel Gotera, a Houston-based reporter. The Astros, they do seem like heavy favourites, and I started by asking him whether the Phillies can force an upset.
In fact, this is the largest gap between the two teams as far as regular season wins goes since the 1906 World Series, when the Cubs back then had won 116 games, the White Sox 93 games, and the White Sox actually beat the Cubs back in 1906. So this would be a huge upset if the Phillies were able to pull it off. But yeah, being here in Houston, everybody's pretty fired up for this Astros team.
I wanted to ask you about Dusty Baker, in his story, being involved in baseball for so long. What is he now? 73. He's in at Houston since 2020. He's kind of turned them around a little bit, because we had that incident, didn't we, with the signage and that everybody kind of harks back to with the Astros. And it could be amazing if he was finally to win a World Series.
Yeah, I really would. Dusty's a baseball lifer. He won a World Series as a player, never been to the World Series. Well, never won a World Series, I should say, as a manager. When Dusty was hired here in Houston back in 2020, after the sign stealing scandal and all the stuff that broke, people were wondering if he was the right guy for this job. He'd been around baseball for a long time. And I mean, sure enough, he really has been. He's been to the ALCS, AL Championship Series 3 straight times, 2 times to the World Series. He's really provided a calming presence for that Astros team. In fact, the players were talking about it yesterday at Media Day. Dusty Baker says that he just loves this group because he's been able to take the pressure off of them a little bit, especially the first year after all that stuff broke and all the pressure was on them to play well and to play in hostile environments. But Dusty Baker has been a really calming force. Wouldn't be surprised if Dusty then retires, but he's been in baseball his whole life, so not really sure if that's even going to happen, but it would be huge for him.
And finally, before we let you go, Daniel, I just wonder what you've made of the season as a whole. We know it was later to start with that collective bargaining agreement and all that. I just wonder now that you're at World Series time, whether you think this will go down as a vintage season.
Yeah, I think it will, because I think right now in baseball, we see a lot of parity, which is good for the game. We saw a lot of teams in playoff contention. They expanded the playoff roster to 6 teams, changed the format a little bit. Usually teams are eliminated sometimes in August and maybe late July, but this year more teams were in the playoff hunt until September, mid to late September, which I think is good for not only for the teams, but for the fan bases. And look, I think baseball is at a good point. They got a lot of young stars rising through the ranks. We'll see some in this World Series. I mean, if you're a baseball fan, this is a good time because there's a lot of great pitching. There's some good hitting going on. And, it should be a really exciting World Series. I'm going with the Astros in 6, but we'll see what happens.
Bold prediction there. Daniel Gotera, reporter with the Houston-based channel KHOU TV. We will, of course, keep you updated on that World Series here on BBC World News.